Welcome to the Small Business Blueprint, a podcast for local business owners who are looking to reach sustainable growth. In each episode, you'll hear directly from small business owners and leaders who have navigated the changes and setbacks that outline their unique blueprint to small business success. So join us to learn how you can turn their stories into actionable steps to transform your business into an established brand in your community.
Welcome into the Small Business Blueprint. My name is Alex, and joining us here today, we have the General Manager of CG&S Design Build based out of Austin, Texas, Dolores Davis. Dolores, thank you so much for joining us here on the Small Business Blueprint today.
Thank you for inviting me, Alex.
Of course. And one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on is you guys have a very unique story to tell. Most of the business owners that we like to talk to on this show are relatively new businesses. They've been around, no more than 5 to 10 years, and the pandemic has played a big part in their business. That is not the case for you folks. You guys have been around a little bit longer.
Yep.
You have a much bigger, broader story to tell. Really to get this going, tell us a little bit of that story, where you all got your start, and really the origin story of CG&S Design Build.
Okay. Well, our story started in 1957. My mom and dad, it was a mom and pop company. My dad was a contractor, a carpenter. My mom was a homemaker, but she was also really book savvy. So they started a construction company, specifically remodeling company in 1957. So that's a long time, 64 years. And they had a lot of kids. And so most of my siblings, all of my brothers, and I all just kind of grew up in the business and started working for them on weekends or the summertime or whatever time that we could. We always worked with my parents. And so when we all graduated from high school and or college, for my brothers and myself, worked for the company. So even though we're a second generation company, we've had about 4 iterations of it. So first it was my mom and dad, and then my brothers and my mom and dad, and then my mom and dad retired, and it was just my brothers, and then one of my brothers, and now it's me and my husband, who's an architect. So in 1994, we pivoted from a remodeling company to a design build company. And I would say that was the biggest shift in our business model. But all along the way, we were kind of growing up as a business, learning what are the things that are necessary to grow and to be a better company. And about 10 years ago, we shifted from creating a scalable company, not just get a bunch of work in and do a bunch of work, but how do we get work in and we can be scalable depending on what the economy was doing, whether it was exploding or whether we had to retract and when it wasn't doing so well, a la 2008, 2009, when everything just fell out from under everyone. So as a design build company now, we have Stuart and I bought the company from my brother 2 years ago. And 1 year in, we hit with a pandemic. Pamphlet on how to run a company through a pandemic. So that has been just the most difficult and most craziest thing I think that we've ever done. But we're doing it, and that's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. So really, what did you guys learn during that course of 2020 that especially with the amount of experience that you bring to the table, 2020 was something completely unique and really an outlier than of anything that we've ever seen. I know you mentioned 2008 and 2009, a little bit different. You could still go do the work. You could still go to people's homes. And there was a portion of 2020 where that was not the case.
Right.
So what did you all learn in 2020 that you feel like you can carry into the future with your business, or even for any other business owners that are out there, some of those tips that you learned along the way during 2020?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we were deemed an essential business, so we actually could work.
Okay.
But the way that we worked had to shift completely. And not only that, in construction, as a design build company in construction, all kinds, it was all off the table. We had to set up our sites differently. We had to go into people's homes that were really afraid. We had to keep people safe out in the field. So it was all just a whole new game. But I really do believe that what has kept us strong and together and sane really was relying on our company culture and relying on our systems. And if we didn't have those two things, I just think everything would have spun out of control, because there are the knowns and the unknowns, and there were a lot of unknowns in here. So those
Absolutely.
things, definitely.
So when you say systems and processes in your culture, were those things that you had established pre-pandemic? I mean, I'm sure the culture was, but the systems and the processes, were those things that you had to modify as the pandemic went along, or were those things that were already in place by the time the pandemic hit?
Well, interestingly enough, as I said, Stuart and I took over the company in 2019. And so we had already begun making this our own, putting our own stamp on it. And so we did start to develop a new project delivery system based on the agile business model. And so we had already, we call it the CG&S way because we're just so bold, I guess. But we wanted to put our stamp on it. And so we had already decided that the way that we were going to develop project delivery of a design product and a construction product and really make it work seamlessly was to build teams. So that's what we did. And then the way we were going to deliver that, or the tool we were going to use, was Microsoft Teams. So we had started that in November 2019, and then thinking, we were going to be big and gung-ho in 2020. We're just going to go. And then the pandemic hit. And so we just completely pivoted. We were like, okay, nobody can be together. Everyone's got to be apart. We've got to really get this new project delivery system down so that we can do our work. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that it's perfect, but it was definitely the vehicle that we used to stay in touch, to, if you know anything about Agile or the Scrum method, to set our sprints. We modified it so that it followed the design process all the way through into construction. So we just did all those kinds of things so that each team leader knew what he or she had to do in order to keep everyone informed, most importantly, the client, and during kind of an unpredictable atmosphere. Oddly enough, though, our leads increased by 120%. I think
really
people were home. They were walking around their neighborhoods because they couldn't go anywhere. They would see our job signs. They were tired of what they could see everything wrong with their home. So on the flip side of, production was struggling a little bit just because of the way we had to work. The design was just off the charts, crazy busy. So we really did need those systems in place in order to manage that load. And we've even had to create new things like create backlogs so that if someone goes in an agreement with us, we don't get to them until August. And people are saying yes. So
wow.
I don't know. It's just the craziest thing.
Wow. A 4-month backlog. That is really impressive.
It is.
And I know I was going to bring this up in a little bit, but we'll just touch on it now. You guys were even featured in a New York Times article, basically talking about how small businesses have thrived during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And in that article, you mentioned how all of a sudden people needed their living spaces to accommodate working from home as well as online schooling. how did you prepare for and navigate that boom? Especially since, I mean, especially from a, when you think about a mainstream media narrative, most small businesses have struggled. And you guys are one of the few businesses that have seen a boom.
Mhm.
So talk about how, if you wouldn't mind, how you guys navigated that boom in business, especially with the COVID restrictions, all the uncertainty, and also making sure that your team meets these new needs that your clients have.
Uh-huh. Well, like I said just a bit ago, with the production end of it, I think that
Mhm.
was the most challenging part because we're a construction company that has an architecture firm in there. So really, the most important thing for us to do, the way that we generate our income is mostly through construction. So if that went to almost a halt, then we got all these leads and we have all these design projects, but that takes momentum to pick up and to get going. So there was a period of time there where um, it was a big struggle but we knew we could forecast that 2021 was going to be this banner year. So we went ahead and we started hiring people. We started developing our teams internally to make sure that we had staff to manage the workload. We didn't hire in production. We just kind of put a pause on that until we knew we were going to have generate projects down the road. So that was really our main way of doing that. We also we started creating better dashboards so that we could see what was coming up and what was going to happen down the road. We predict a banner year this year and already into 2022. So I know that those kinds of things are working. We did, and I want to say this is really important. We also we applied for the PPP loan and got it, and
Okay.
that really did sustain us because, as I said, we're a construction company first, and if we're not building, then we're not creating income. So that was very important, even though we knew our forecast was going to be very, very strong based on all the leads that were coming in for design services. So it's kind of a weird juxtaposition. It's like, well, if you're doing so great, why do you need this money? Well, it's because we're really two businesses in one, and both of those have to function.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I wanted to touch base on something here too. I know you mentioned dashboards just a second ago to really help you guys with the client intake and everything else that you guys are doing. Where are these dashboards strictly something you guys use internally? Are these dashboards that are even client facing? Like, how do these dashboards work and function? And what does that technology look like?
Oh, they're totally internal. I mean, we do have accounting, project management software that we use, that we develop our dashboards there. Those are mostly for financials, all the boring stuff, but important, the AP,
Yeah.
the AR, and the aging, and all of that kind of stuff. Because, again, in business, um, someone told me a long time ago, you don't go out of business because you don't have good systems. You go out of business because you don't have any money. And so
Mhm.
I never forgot that. And so I always remember to make sure I have a really good, strong idea about what our construction income is, what is our design income, what is our schedule, what our schedules look like, and all of those. We have a production manager and a design manager within our company who are fabulous, and we've created these reports, and in our financials we have dashboards to sort of always cross check what is happening, what's coming in. Are we going to be at a deficit? If so, why? And what can we do immediately to impact that? And I think that's the best reason to have a dashboard, is so that you have leading indicators of where a problem might be, so that you can attend to it early, not after the problem has already come up and happened.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice for any business owner that's out there, whether you be a restaurant owner or
Yeah. Oh,
um,
yeah.
across the board. That's incredible advice. So Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes.
Changing gears just a little bit
Right.
here. Your company's story mentions how your reputation and client base primarily grew from word of mouth in the beginning, back in the 50s and 60s when you folks first started. Has that changed since then?
Well, you mean the word of mouth?
Right.
Yes. I mean, it has changed in the sense that we have a strong, passionate desire for marketing in our company. So, in other words, we don't just rely on word of mouth. We make sure that people know who we are. We
Mhm.
keep in front of our client base. We have tried to have conversations and communicate with the incoming flux of people that are coming to Austin. That's one of the biggest changes for us here is that when when we started out and up until let's say the 2000s, um, there weren't that many design builders in town, and our population wasn't that strong. We were beginning to develop the momentum as an economic, you know, growth here in Austin, but it's not anywhere where it is now. So,
Right.
so with all these new people and coming into Austin, we're not first of mind anymore. Where I think we were up until a certain point. So it's really important for us to get our message out and what we do and how we do it and why we do it and and so that we're also we're in front of top of mind for the new people. As far as our client base, we're constantly touching them and tickling them and you know staying in front of them because we know that a referral is the best lead source that we can get, and so that's really super important to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I do want to mention too, how do you stay on top of those new clients that are coming through? Is your online presence a part of that? And the only reason I say that is I noticed when you look up home renovations in Austin, you guys are the first thing that pops up. And especially with all the new technology that's moving into Austin, is that something that you guys have been consciously aware of and tried to stay on top of? Is your online presence and what that looks like?
No, definitely, yes. And we work with a PR firm here in Austin, Look Think Make, and so they and a marketing firm, and so we work with them. Like I said, I think that some people think that marketing is just advertising, and it's not. That's part of it, yes, but for us, we've identified that the best way to having a search engine that works, SEO that works, and be thoughtful and methodical and work with the people that are best at that to make sure that we're getting the kinds of leads that we need for our company that work best for our company. We're not a fit for everyone. We're only a fit for some
Mhm.
people, and so we just want to get those people. So our our searches is important. Social media is important. How those two tie together, which to me, Alex, honestly, is a mystery. That is not my first thing. It's there are other people that are way smarter than me in that, but I do trust the people that we hire and to trust the people that we work with. So in that respect. But you have to develop a good relationship, and you have to, We meet monthly, and we check on reports, and we always check: is this working for us, or isn't it, or is it working for us too well? And we have to take it down a notch. So I
Right.
think the key is to make sure that we're having those checks and balances, and being able to impact that one way or another.
Absolutely. I like how you mentioned that some things can work too
Yes.
well. That's one thing I think most business owners don't anticipate is if they do get an online presence and it works too well,
Mhm.
what do I do then?
Yeah.
That's a conversation that we end up having over here a lot is, whether it be this isn't working quite as well as I thought, I was anticipating more lead intake coming through, or
Yeah.
this is working way too well. I have too much business. What do I do now?
Yes.
Um, and that's a conversation I don't think a lot of business owners are prepared to have because it's not one you really anticipate having is too much
No.
business or
No.
or too much of the wrong kind of business. Okay, we have too much of this coming through. How do we pivot from X to Y and get more of Y coming through? So That's something I think a lot of business owners don't totally anticipate when they get into the online or try to ramp up their online presence. So that's interesting that you guys have seen that. What do you do in that particular case if you're seeing too much coming through from one particular source? What does that pivot and reconstruct look like?
Yeah. You mean instead of going into a fetal position? Um,
Right.
what we did was we went back to Link Make and we said this is what's going on, and so and then got advice like, okay, we can dial back the way that we're putting this information out over here and just keep this part over here, because we had already decided that during the summertime or summer early fall that we were not going to take a whole slew of kinds of projects. So we set up our list. So we already knew that. And then we decided that, and then we saw that our size of projects increased. And so people were willing to spend more money. So we knew what was happening already. So we focused on those kinds of projects and kind of put those other ones off to the side. So very simply, so we would focus on whole house renovations and architecturally forward design projects,
Mhm.
and then left off maybe the just bathrooms or the just kitchens. So
Right.
even though we can do those and we do those beautifully, it just didn't make sense based on the data that was coming in. So we kind of like, carved out how best to address the leads that were coming in and what was going to work best for our business at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that answer, especially when you can. I always like to tell my clients it's like optimizing
Mhm.
your time and your resources more than anything else. You can do one job that takes you a week. That's $5,000. You can do another job that takes 2 weeks and it's $50,000. Which one are you going to take?
Exactly.
So optimizing that time, optimizing your resources
Mhm.
is always the best way to go about how to choose those jobs. I do just have a couple last questions for you, and then
Okay.
we'll get you out of here.
Okay.
You guys seem to have a reputation of delivering quality work and having a responsive, friendly, reliable team. Are there any processes or strategies you use to ensure that nothing slips through the cracks when it comes to project management or client communications?
Oh gosh, there's always those slips through the cracks, aren't there? Okay, it really is all about processes, and
Mhm.
and when we follow the process, it's more likely things will not slip through the cracks. So the project delivery system, which is from when we sign a project into our design phase, that all has a process to go through. We have phases, we have sections in those phases, we have a list within those phases. So everything is a procedure. And then when we sign that into a construction agreement, then there's a whole list of other processes we go through. So, and and really, if people are struggling with that, if we have employees that like they're dropping the ball, it's not our job to look at to the employee. It's our job to look at the process. Like, okay, is something
Okay.
working? Yes or no. Is a person having a hard time with that process? Yes or no. Why? And then address it. And so if we do that and we continue to do that and either tweak it or drop it completely or address whatever we do, whatever, if we can address that, then we get people in their groove and they can follow those procedures and they can do all the things that they're supposed to do, and we can have it can be smoother rather than like a roller coaster that you don't.
Abs- yeah, absolutely. Do you guys use any technology to help not only your employees, but especially in client communication? Do you guys use any technology to help that communication be streamlined?
The main one that we use right now is Microsoft Teams.
Okay.
And within Teams, and that's really to keep all of us informed, the team informed. And then within there are some apps that we've been utilizing, like Planner, and I'm just gonna say right out front, like that is working, but I just think the simpler you keep it, the better. If there's too many things in there, it gets a little overwhelming. And
Mhm.
I want to say two things about that. On the flip side, there are things that we're doing within our systems, like that have helped us, like going paperless, or with our AR and AP stuff. So we are streamlining some things, and I think that does help as well. But and the big thing right now that I'm as kind of the owner leader of the company is that I don't want to overwhelm our staff with too much. I want to
Right.
have things that work for them and work well. And when we roll out of the pandemic and can move into something that's more normal, we can start evaluating some other things that can help us. But I think that as a business owner, the hardest thing to really truly understand is how the pandemic has impacted our teams and our clients and our subcontractors and suppliers and vendors on a human level. Because
Mhm.
if you don't say it, then you don't know it. And a lot of
Right.
people just don't verbalize those kinds of things. But I know that it's impacting us, and I know that it's been a challenging for us and for everyone. And so I just like keep everything on the DL right now until we can get out, of this a little bit of the whirlwind of operating a business in a pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And having that empathy really goes a long way, not only for the people within your organization, but anybody that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Just that little extra empathy, especially with
Yeah,
we've all gone through something in
yeah,
2020, and
yeah,
it wasn't an easy year for anybody, even if like you guys, you saw a massive boom in business. Still not an easy time. People still have human struggles that they go through. So that empathy definitely goes a long way. My last question for you: what piece of advice would you have for a small business owner trying to build a reputation like CG&S has built?
one piece of advice. um,
11 pieces of advice, whatever it is.
eight, one for every kid. I think that the most important piece of advice I have is to listen, to be a really good listener, like with your employees, with our employees. And then, if you're hearing stress and strain and all of that kind of stuff, and then that's real. And so you won't, as a leader, you won't know it, how to make some shifts or decisions or policy changes or whatever, if you don't really know what's going on. And the only way to do that is to talk less and listen more. And so, I think that's true with clients and everyone that you work with. And the other thing is that I feel like in our company, our team has to come first, and taking care of the team, supporting it, giving it its attention and love that it needs, will always empower them to take care of everything else, which is the client and the process and the project and all of that. And then the client takes care of your company. So I think that sometimes, I think as owners, we get distracted. We want the client to come first, but the client will eventually come first if you take care of your team who takes care of them.
Absolutely. That's amazing advice. Dolores Davis from CG&S Design Build. If someone did want to go and hire you guys or talk to you, how would they go about doing that? Plug the social media, the website, anywhere else anybody can find you.
Oh, goodness. Well, they can find us on cgsdb.com. It's a lot of letters, I know. Or db at cgsdb.com. Or just Google us. We're CG&S. Oh, and by the way, CG&S stands for Clarence Guerrero and Sons. We're going to have to work on that dollars part, but anyway.
Have to work in the D in there
Yeah.
somewhere, but awesome. Well, Dolores, thank you so much for joining us here today. This has been the Small Business Blueprint podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Small Business Blueprint. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow along on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. This podcast is brought to you by GoSite, an all-in-one platform that makes it easier for your customers to find, book, and pay for your services online instantly. Get started for free at GoSite.com.